Welcome to NEK VT Rocks, and my guest today is Peggy Stevens. Peggy is here from D.U.M.P, and D.U.M.P has been on this show a couple of times before, so we don't really need to go a whole lot into who D.U.M.P is. But just briefly, it stands for Don't Undermine Memphremagog's Purity, right?
Yep.
And full disclosure here, I'm also a member of D.U.M.P, as are so many of us here, because it's such an important issue, keeping our lake clean. But you're going to talk about a new project. Tell me about it.
Okay. We are right now working on developing a petition to have our lake, Lake Memphremagog, designated as a lake in crisis. This is a bill that was passed, I think, in 2018 in the Vermont legislature with an overwhelming support from the legislature. And the purpose of the designation is to bring attention and resources to lakes that are experiencing difficult challenges in terms of water quality.
So what would Memphremagog be experiencing? I mean, other than the obvious. But
Okay. So in terms of crisis, I think it's really important to understand what exactly a crisis is, because when you say lake in crisis, to a person, they might become alarmed, like,
Right.
But the situation in a crisis is a situation that is really challenging and requires some immediate decision making. And the decision that we make, either to take extra steps and precautions to protect the lake, or to perhaps, wait and see what happens.
Okay.
Well, a decision and its timing can mean a huge difference in outcomes.
So what are some of the issues that Memphremagog has
Okay.
that we would all know about?
Yeah, and over the last decade or so, the Basin 17 plan was being developed and was finally ratified in 2017. And that was developed in cooperation with the Agency of Natural Resources to basically focus on issues of concern around phosphorus runoff and other nutrient runoff that adds to problems in the lake, such as blue-green algae blooms and other types of degradation that affect the quality of the lake.
So if you're just a local person like I am and you are, how would we know that Memphremagog has got some issues?
Okay, well, when you're standing on Shattuck Hill, the lake is beautiful.
Stunning.
Absolutely
stunning.
And no question about it. And when we stand up there, we understand why the lake is such a huge attraction for tourists, which of course is a really significant part of our local economy.
And right now we're marketing the hell out of it so that it looks fabulous and brings people in. And it does. It's gorgeous.
But when you get down to the lake shore, depending on what part of the lake, but right out here in front of I call it the Grand Union, the Vista, and that whole lakefront property, I have been on the shore there and seen blue-green algae bloom.
Yeah.
You see the invasive species, the Eurasian milfoil, matted all along the shore and out to a distance of 20 feet or so. Those were issues that were addressed in the Basin 17 planning process and included in the effort to, in the language of Basin 17, restore the lake quality.
Okay.
But there are two other very significant changes that have happened that were not considered at all in the Basin 17 plan. The first is the fact that in 2019, the ANR tested the effluent coming from the wastewater treatment plant.
I'm going to stop you, and we're going to have to define some of the terms.
Okay,
So for
I'm
everybody
sorry.
listening to this, effluent is
The
crud,
effluent is the water coming out of the
sewage plant.
Right. And the important thing to understand about it, and I didn't come here just to talk about that, but the treatment facilities are not designed to filter for hazardous or toxic chemicals.
Right.
And so anything that comes in that's of a toxic nature is going to leave the facility in that water in exactly the same state. These PFAS chemicals are chemicals of emerging concern that are all over the news. They're the bad poster boys of hazardous or toxic chemicals. They haven't been deemed hazardous yet. They will be. So the state set a limit for PFAS in drinking water at 20 parts per trillion, which is an extremely stringent standard among all the states. Ours is the most stringent. Well, the effluent was tested at being almost 3 times the drinking water standard, and that is when the coincidentally the moratorium on disposing of leachate into the treatment plant went into effect. So that hasn't been going in then, but up until that point, between 2012 and 2019, 36 million gallons of leachate were disposed of through that treatment facility that didn't treat for chemicals. So
right
that's
now,
one
that's
concern.
stopped.
That's stopped, but we need to consider how important it is not to reintroduce it.
Absolutely.
And that became even more apparent, Pam, when last December, Secretary Moore held it was a virtual discussion about the findings of these cancerous brown bullhead. We call them bullpout around here, and it's a popular eating fish.
Yes.
Well, 25 to 40% of the bullheads sampled in the South Bay and in what they call Hospital Cove, which is, I think, also known as Scott's Cove.
Yes.
25 to
That's off
40% of those fish sampled had cancerous lesions, either melanomas or kidney or liver cancers. This is hugely significant percentage. And so in that little hour discussion around the bullhead and these findings of the study was actually published in 2019, I think, but it had been undertaken between 2012 and 2017. So they had studied over a long period of time. Couldn't determine what caused the cancers. In this discussion with the secretary, she said, yes, more research definitely needs to be done to determine what the cause is. And in the meantime, actually, it was me in the meeting. I asked, well, you said that there's this percentage of cancerous fish. We know that they are found only in environmentally contaminated waters. And so, in effect, then, are you saying that the waters of Lake Memphremagog, where these fish are found, are environmentally contaminated? And she and the 2 fish biologists present in that meeting said yes.
Right. And that's really important information.
This is really important, and this is really what got us thinking about how are we going to raise the level of concern in our community? And this is where the idea for the petition came from.
And we only know about that particular species of fish because probably others have not been tested.
Well, yes, that's exactly the point. So we want this designation, and the Secretary of the Natural Resources is the only person who can make that designation. So she's intimately familiar already with the problems, right? So by getting that designation, the first thing they'll need to do is develop a response plan. But since we already have Basin 17 plan in place, it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to expand on that existing plan.
And Basin 17 covers the entire watershed. It's not just the lake.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's an important point, too, because while, of course, our focus of concern is on our lake, and I say our lake, but I live on Echo Lake, but that's in our watershed, and I'm very aware as a property owner on Echo Lake that anything that's coming in from Seymour is going to affect the health of Echo. Anything leaving Echo is going to ultimately affect the health of Lake Memphremagog, and I just feel like it's all of our water,
It
and we
is.
need to protect the entire watershed, but really focus our concern on Lake Memphremagog right now.
It's as good a starting place as any, and it's pretty large. So the
But-
other interesting thing is we talk about the blue-green algae blooms. Now, okay, they have always happened. There's a lot of reasons for that. But are they increasing, and do we pay attention to them?
Yeah, and they
what about
haven't
the-
always happened
Yeah, they have.
over
Decades.
historical time. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess that would be on account of perhaps agricultural runoff, but also landowner runoff. And I don't want this to be
Right.
hung on the necks of farmers,
Right.
because farmers are doing a lot and have been doing in cooperation
Right.
with the state to try to limit the runoff from
Yeah.
agriculture. But landowners are equally responsible when they use fertilizers that contain phosphorus or nitrogen or other chemicals.
And when we pave our driveways so
Yeah.
that the water has no choice but to run off, it can't be slowly absorbed into the
Exactly,
ground.
and it enters either the water body directly or into the municipal sewer system, but it all ends up in the lake.
Exactly.
The chloride from the roads is a concern. I mean, there's so many different contributors, including hazardous chemicals, again, toxins like herbicides and pesticides that are commonly used, and we continue to urge the public to become educated about the things that they can do to limit the types
Exactly.
of pollution that threaten the lake as well.
I think as those of us who live in the Newport area and use the lake know, there are weeds there, lots and lots of weeds, and those of us who swim in the lake are particularly aware of that. I mean, you plow your way in through all of this vegetation, and certainly in the 12 years I've lived here, the vegetation has increased.
Yes.
And
So the blue-green algae blooms have increased. You can see them, like I said, I saw on the shores by the Lakefront Plaza, also along the bike path up north towards where you would head off to go to Eagle Point. The invasive species, the Eurasian milfoil has been established for a long time, and once established, it's virtually impossible to get rid of. And it really impairs recreation, swimming, as you say, boating.
Kayaking,
Yeah.
catches in propellers.
Exactly. And
we
it's
have
not attractive. And then there are other things, like there's a new clam that's just recently been identified that's considered invasive. And up
And the
north in
zebra
Magog,
mussels.
there's the zebra mussels, but they're going to be here if they're not already.
They're here.
Yeah, they're here now.
And we have our very own special starry stonewort,
Yep.
which is in Scott's Cove and in a couple of other areas, which is this sort of goopy mass that you just see in blocks.
Yes, exactly.
So we all know that we have these problems. So if this area, if the lake gets the lake in crisis designation, that means resources will be there to help clean up the lake.
At least increased eligibility for
Cool.
resources. And it would definitely put us up higher on the list. And, we recently got in touch with the Lake Champlain Basin Program
Yeah.
and learned that they receive federal funding to help to combat the crises that exist in their
Sure.
lake. And, we are hoping to garner state resources, federal resources, nonprofit, philanthropic resources. I've, since learning about this designation, I know about the Memphremagog Watershed Association, but I wasn't aware about the other affiliations related to the lake, like
Right.
I don't know, do they still have the International Swim?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
Right, and
Kingdom Games has
right.
an enormous number of swims.
And there's the marina and the boating association.
Memphremagog Community Maritime,
Yep,
which is the boat.
yep.
the Northern
And
Star.
I would also imagine the chambers of commerce would be interested.
Yes.
I see this as a great opportunity, Pam, too, to really form a stronger alliance
Right.
between all these various groups that are focused and concerned on the lake.
Absolutely.
And I think that this isn't an issue around dump. This is an issue around our community.
And the
a
lake-
healthy lake is gonna result in a healthier
Absolutely.
community.
Well, the other fascinating thing about our lake, much more than Champlain, is that we are right on the Canadian border. And the first 5 miles of our lake are in Vermont. And then there's this invisible line with sort of bollards along it. It's not so invisible that way. And the rest, 3/4 of the lake, is in Canada. But as our water flows north, we are giving Canada anything that goes into the lake at our end.
Exactly.
Which is not being a good neighbor.
Right, and it's 75% of the water in the lake that comes from this 20%
Right.
that is in the United States. So we owe a great deal of concern to our Canadian neighbors.
We certainly do.
Again, I don't think it's news that 175,000 or more Quebec neighbors get their drinking water from Lake Memphremagog.
Right.
So it's not just an issue of local concern, it really is an issue of an international concern.
Which is an important factor.
Absolutely. And we have, I first learned about this issue when I went to the meeting held in September 2018 down at the
At the gateway.
At the Gateway,
Yeah.
thank you. And there were a lot of people in the audience that night. It was a standing room
It was
only
a big
through the
meeting.
doors and out
Yeah.
onto the deck. But many people from Canada came to that meeting.
Right.
And I think it reminded me of our proximity to our Canadian neighbors. And we really need to remember how much Canadians contribute to our local economy.
A big chunk.
And it's not just the boaters coming down on the lake. It's people who come to shop in our stores
Right.
and eat in our restaurants.
Yeah.
And they're...
If there were any questions about that, this lockdown has certainly reminded people how much of their business was Canadian.
Exactly.
It's really important.
And how we look forward to resuming that relationship
I
whenever
can't
this...
wait to be able to cross the border
Oh,
again.
you and me both.
I really miss it.
And I have heard more people say that, too.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even realize how many people enjoy just going up to the Eastern Townships. And
My curling
it's
club is
mutual.
right over the
There you
border and we
go.
can't go.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, I know.
No, I guess I just see this as such a positive.
Yes.
I'm going to throw this out there.
Uh-huh.
The only concern I've heard expressed about being designated as a lake in crisis is what will it do to our property values? And I'm going to speak from the experience of being a lakefront property owner on Echo. If I knew that my town had the chance to get this designation, bring more attention, more resources to our lake in order to help to protect it, to restore
Right.
whatever quality has been lost, and to ensure that it was going to remain a healthy lake into the future. If I found out that my town turned down that opportunity, I would be fit to be tied.
Exactly.
I see this designation as being only positive for property owners
Right.
and for maintaining property values. And property values are a huge part of our tax base.
Right.
So these are long-range decisions. We can't make short-sighted
Yeah, if I was
decisions
looking
now.
again to move here and I found out that the lake was really being, quote, worked on, I'd be thrilled.
Exactly. And so I just don't, I brought it up because I just feel like it's a really easy argument to, I was going to say shoot down. It's kind of violent, but,
I would think that ignoring the lake is a great way to lower your property value.
Well, because, and even probably in not too long a time, once the lake reaches a tipping point in
Right.
terms of its degradation, And that's the work that the state uses, so that's why I'm using it. You can't turn that around.
No.
Time really is of the essence, because when it comes to this kind of environmental contamination, you really can wait too long.
Right.
And then, try as you might, you're not going to restore the quality of the lake, no matter how hard you try. And even trying to stem the tide of further degradation, it may just be beyond the point of no return.
Seriously challenging. Although, this is the designation that Lake Kami got, correct?
Yeah.
Look what they've been able to do with that lake, and that was really a lake that was in crisis.
Yes, and it's still in trouble, but the
Oh,
designation's
it's night
only
and
been in
day.
place
Night
2
and day difference.
years.
Right.
And that's one thing, you know, I think we would hope to look into anyway. They got an aeration system installed. It's a $1 million project. But the purpose of the installation, I think, is to oxygenate the water to prevent the development or the spread of these algae blooms.
Right, and we certainly don't need that with this lake because our lake is so much bigger and has so much natural oxygen at this point. But doing everything we can to never get to that place.
And the other thing that happened for them is that UVM has undertaken some research projects in Carmine. Maybe that's something that could also be brought to bear from Magog.
Right.
So
That would certainly tie into work that Magog Community Maritime is doing. They're not just the boat that tours the lakes. Their boat is also an educational facility. So they use that boat and are willing to use other boats to access bits of the lake that are hard to get to otherwise. And my understanding is that MCI, the equivalent of MWA on the other side, but obviously much bigger than us, is also able to do projects like that and partner with others.
Yeah, they have that advantage. They have a much greater membership. Although,
much
you know,
bigger area.
I'm hoping that that this effort will revitalize the Magog Watershed Association and their efforts and their membership and all of the affiliations that they can create with other people and organizations. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to join forces with other people who care about the lake. Because it's the people who live near the lake who really need to adopt that attitude of being caretakers of the lake. At Echo Lake, we have a very strong Echo Lake Protection Association. Our membership is very involved, and you can see the benefit.
You can. I mean, Echo has some pretty stringent rules. I've both kayaked and swum in Echo, and I know I've had to have the bottom of my kayak inspected, and there have been people who come and breathed heavily on us while we've been doing serious swims there. But that's good.
No,
and
that's
nobody's complaining.
They're there to protect to the extent possible.
And Lake Seymour does the same thing. They have superb inspection.
And that's a challenge for Magog because it's so big and there's so many points of entry for boats. I don't know whether or not they've been able to install an access greeter program at every potential point.
There's too many points. But if people understand the need and the reasons, they're much more willing to say, sure, I can inspect my own boat. I can be serious about this and not be careless because it's important.
Exactly.
I want this lake to be here for my kids and grandkids.
That's why I'm here. That is why I'm here. I'll be dead before long, you know, and my children and my grandchildren are going to inherit this part of the earth. And I want it to be as pure and clean for them as it was for me when I first arrived. So.
And water is life.
And water is life. And it's life not just for people, and we really need to remember that. The fish depend on the quality of the lake, as has become painfully aware. The wildlife that drink from the lake and inhabit the lake, as well as the people who live here or come from afar to enjoy it.
And we all in theory, need to understand, and in practice, the circle of life. If we eat from the lake, even if it's so far removed from the lake we forget where a fish came from,
Mm-hmm.
we are putting in our bodies what swam in that lake.
Well,
what
and you know,
fed
this
on the
is
bottom of that
this
lake.
is a really critical point and a kind of a sensitive point. But another reason that more research needs to occur around the concerns around the cancers in the fish
Mhm.
that we know of.
Right.
I am not aware, at least, of any results published of fish further up the food chain who might have eaten of those species. The biologist in the meeting in December said that the fish advisories that are in place now ought to be sufficient, but no one really knows for certain.
What does that even mean?
And he did say, and if you saw these cancerous fish, you wouldn't want to eat them anyway, but he did advise against eating fish with cancerous lesions.
Oh, how thoughtful.
But it kind of go without saying once you see the pictures. But these aren't just sort of out there maybe concerns. These are present concerns that we really need to follow down.
Absolutely.
And that whole idea, just back to that precautionary principle, if you don't know that something you're about to do is not going to cause harm, then you shouldn't do it.
Right.
We teach our kids to consider the consequences of their actions.
Mhm.
You have to think before you act. Well, this is our responsibility now,
Right.
and we need to do what we can.
And pay attention to what the possible future consequences are of everything that we do.
Exactly. And, this is just one corner of the world. There are environmental concerns around the
Everywhere.
globe. But this is where, think globally, act locally
right.
comes in. This
Yeah.
is why I'm here. I can actually make a difference here.
Yes.
I can send $50 to some environmental organization that will deal with something that's endemic in the world, that's happening everywhere. But this is a place that I can really apply my energy and my concern
Right.
in a way that could really hopefully make a real big difference for my community and for my kids and my grandchildren.
Right.
And all my former students, I was a teacher. All my kids now, they're in their 30s and 20s, and they're grown-ups, and I hope they're listening, and they know me as a person who cares. I care about kids. Right. I care about the environment, and that's why I'm here.
And most kids do care about the environment. A few months ago, we had some kids from Coventry School here who had done the program about single-use plastic bags. And that was part of what got it stopped.
Yes.
So we can make a difference.
Absolutely, and that's another idea that I'd like to promote. The idea of like a location-based education.
Right.
We could develop links with our supervisory union and have students engaged in research
That's what
and
MCN
learning
is
about.
doing.
Yes,
That's
and the issue
already
of the
happening.
plastics, and now we could do the same thing with the issue around concerns around contamination
Right.
in our lakes and rivers. So it's an immediate. There are many opportunities, out of serious concerns.
Right.
Really positive things can happen.
I mean, it may be that one of the positive spin-offs from COVID, and it's really hard to think of any positive spin-offs from COVID because we're all so sick of it, is that we have learned from that being outdoors is the most useful thing that we can do. So a lot of kids right now, even this time of the year, are being, quote, educated outdoors. They're doing as much out there as possible because they don't have to be masked in the same way. They're much freer to move around. Well, here's a wonderful opportunity for kids to learn about their local environment, which then can generalize to other things. I mean, it makes history relevant, it makes geography relevant, it makes the environmental education sciences relevant.
Yep.
It's an opportunity.
Yep. And we know from, again, in education, when kids have opportunity for a hands-on experience, and it's
Right.
not just kids, any learner of any
Absolutely.
age who has an opportunity for a hands-on experience is going to internalize what they learn and hang
Exactly.
on to it for a lot longer than they would reading out of a text in a classroom
Yeah.
or even watching a video. So, again, as an educator, I definitely want to follow this down.
Yeah.
But really, it's just, again, maybe it's a sort of pie in the sky, but I just really believe that we can take adversity and turn it around and turn it to our advantage. And that's what I'm hoping that will
We
come
can
out
do
of this effort.
We're about out of time. This goes incredibly fast.
Yeah.
So what people can look for is that there's going to be a petition? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Any day now. It'll be coming in through your email. It's a change.org
Okay.
petition, which probably your viewers are familiar with change.org
Right.
petitions. But we are going to be doing a public outreach around this effort when the petition goes out for signatures. Interestingly, the only requirement from the state is 15 signatures or one select board of an affected town. So the lake, in this case, the select boards of Derby, Newport Town, and the municipality of the city of Newport could all weigh in, and we certainly hope that they do. But even if only one of them,
Right.
and nobody else signed a petition, could still get that designation, I anticipate we're going to get
Hundreds.
hundreds of signatures. Because we know from our work in D.U.M.P,
Yeah.
we already have hundreds of supporters
Right.
who've supported our efforts previously.
And how could anybody not want our lake to stay beautiful?
It
Common
just
sense.
seems like such a win-win situation, doesn't it?
Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming in and doing this, and I'm really looking forward to see how this moves forward, and asking you to come back probably in a few months and see
and
where it's gone then.
Report on our
Hopefully with the
success.
designation.
Yes, exactly.
It would be great.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me. You really had to persuade me, but I have found this to be really enjoyable.
It's
so
fun,
thank
isn't
you.
it?
Yes, thank you, Pam.
Thank you.